Linda Daniels. I am an architect with Capital Planning and Space Management here at Georgia Tech. And if you're wondering why I'm up here talking at the town hall about the new library, it's because this university, Georgia Tech, started planning for its library at its inception. And so before we get into the renewal of the library, which is the main focus today, I am going to tell you a little bit about the history of libraries here at Georgia Tech and the planning for those libraries to give you some context about where we're going as we are now under construction for the renewed design of the Price Gilbert Tower complex that is our library. We're doing all right?
Yeah, I'm looking for the lights.
Looking for the lights so you can see my beautiful historic graphic of a map of the Georgia Tech campus back, I believe, in 1890 something, maybe 93. It was shortly after the original two buildings were built. You can't hear?
Better.
Use the microphone on the stand.
That's better.
Is that better? Is that any better? No.
That's for the camera.
Oh boy. So much for my notes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, the mic on the stand is for the video.
Okay.
Okay, I cannot find the light switches.
Is there any way we
They're
could
right
move
there.
that over there without breaking something? Sorry for the technical difficulties.
Thank you. Yeah. Where's that flashlight?
So do I even need this?
You need that.
I need this. Okay, I need this for
the
everything.
video.
All right. Can you hear me now? In the back. Thank you. Okay, so history lesson. Try not to bore you here. Georgia Tech, as I said, has been planning libraries since its beginning. But the journey to build a library worthy of Georgia Tech, both a structure or a building and a collection, was not an easy one. What began as a few books on the shelf of one professor's office slowly progressed to several rooms within the academic building, the original building on campus that we lovingly refer to as Tech Tower. That building then was replaced by the Carnegie Library, where our administration now sits next door to the academic building. And ultimately, the Carnegie building was replaced by Price Gilbert and its associated tower, the most recent construction of which was in 1968. We are now ready to embark on the renewal of this series of libraries. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit more about that. The first library, as you can see, was in Tech Tower. It was located in the middle three rooms on the second floor. But as I said earlier, the library only consisted of a few books on a shelf in a professor's office. So those three rooms were a little bit grand. If you see any other similar drawings of the original building, in many of them you will see that in lieu of being labeled a library, those three rooms were labeled the drawing studio, because it did in fact function as a drawing studio while it was waiting for a collection to exist. The other picture is the interior. You can see two grand arches, and I saw Juan Archila from the College of Science. And if you go to the second floor of the library or of the academic building today and visit the College of Science, you can actually go in and see the main central reading room and one of the side rooms with the large barrel arch opening into it, which was recently made visible when we took down some other walls that were put up in the interim to block all of that wonderful connection on the second floor of that building. So go check that out if you get a chance. Subsequently to outgrowing the 3 rooms in Tech Tower, then President Kenneth Matheson, who had originally started Tech's library in his office, went to the Carnegie Foundation and got funding for the Carnegie Library, which you see pictured here. So that edifice was part of a grand library building plan that the Carnegie Foundation undertook at that point in time. So despite the auspicious start of the building, the library collection suffered early on, as then President Matheson stated, when he remarked, "The lack of attention given to the library in the early days of the school is strange and hard to explain, even when we remember the straitened financial situation prevailing at the time." So in 1927, that changed. Enter Dorothy Crossland. Joining Georgia Tech as an assistant librarian in 1925, before becoming the head librarian in 1927, she worked tirelessly to amass one of the best collections of technological and scientific books at a university in the country. Planning for the Price Gilbert Memorial Library was a nearly 30-year struggle for a proper library to house the ever-growing collection of technical publications, considered by many to be one of the best in the country after World War II. The need for sophisticated technical education was expanding, and Georgia Tech was growing exponentially. By 1946, the library had 80,000 volumes, more than double the number of volumes the Carnegie Library had been built to hold. Imagine that. A new library was desperately needed. One early document noted that the new library should be centrally located on a site that would allow for expansion and should be accessible from the academic and building and dormitory buildings. Prior to understanding the post-World War growth at Georgia Tech, it was actually envisioned that demolishing the original Tech Tower to allow for the building of a new complex of a library, a classroom building, and an administration building might be appropriate. Fortunately for us, the post-war boom in enrollment growth and Georgia Tech's growth precluded them demolishing Tech Tower, and we still have that beloved icon today. Next slide. This is the rendering of the earliest complex of the buildings, which included a new library, again, potentially envisioned to be right on the Tech Tower site, but subsequently moved about 600 yards north. The president that championed the moving of the site and the keeping of Tech Tower, President Van Leer, provided this assessment of this rendering and series of design documents that the College of Architecture professors had put together at the time. It is with extreme regret that I inform you that the present plans for the proposed library cannot be accepted. The exterior of this building will have to be radically changed. My reasons for this are as follows. I do not like it personally. It does not look like a library and has no appeal to me from the aesthetic standpoint. He went on to say the librarian didn't like it and any number of other people, but then he ended with, I have yet to receive a single favorable comment concerning its beauty and appearance. Thus, I believe that I have made a conscious effort to train myself to see something beautiful about the building and to convince others that it is worthy of the investment of our funds and the funds of the state. I have been unable to do this. And we shall have to change the appearance of the building and move it before we move forward. The College of Architecture faculty was not deterred. They continued to work in the newer functional architecture Bauhaus style. And P.M. Heffernan, probably one of the most renowned architects to come out of Georgia Tech's program, well, I don't know if he came from the program, but anyway, he was on the faculty here, ultimately designed what we know as the Price Gilbert Library in the Bauhaus style, and it is probably one of the most nationally and internationally acclaimed buildings that is on the Georgia Tech campus, or that kind of came out of that school of thought. The design, as you can see, was not a complex of 3 buildings, and it was described that the building is ultimately designed to match funding available. Any of you who know construction on the Georgia Tech campus know a little bit about the value engineering process for that. We'll now understand why we had 1 building. Even at the time that the building was designed, it was understood that it would have to have an addition designed just to accommodate the growing collection that we continue to see. So, in 1962, Price Gilbert Memorial Library was considered a jewel of the campus. As hoped, when the building was being planned, the design of the library served the needs of the growing institution well, but as predicted, within 10 years, tremendous pressures were being exerted on the building, and by 1964, plans for the needed graduate tower addition began. That was designed by Atlanta's Robert and Company, and they were picked as the architects and advised to design a building with expansion in mind. The Graduate Library Tower addition was designed with the foundation and structure to add up to 5 additional floors when needed. You can actually see the structure as built without the 5 additional floors. That being said, the desire to continue to warehouse books in, or the stacks in a tower on prime real estate in the center of campus eventually lost traction anyway. New models for digital access and climate-controlled archives to help preserve books and paper documents longer gained momentum. The tower remains at its original height, but after this new library renewal, it will be flooded with light and a new meeting place for people and ideas, not for the storage of books. Its vertical expansion possibilities are an opportunity for another day. There was a better idea for storing the books and the ever-expanding paper collection. This is when I met Catherine Murray Rust 5 years ago when I joined Georgia Tech. The Library Service Center, a shared partnership with Emory University, was under discussion, and I had the very good fortune of working with Catherine Murray Rust and the entire library team on work on partnering with Emory to create not only a building to share the storage of 2 collections, but a shared collection, which provided additional expanded access to both institutions. The LSC is a secure, climate-controlled facility that employs state-of-the-art equipment and technology. It houses the paper collections and ensures a cost-effective long-term preservation of those. Interestingly enough, the preservation of paper exceeds, and I learned this from Catherine Murray Rust, exceeds that of current digital technologies for preserving content. The LSC is located on 4.6 acres of Emory's Briarcliff campus. Its services do ensure fast retrieval and delivery. There is a reading room on site for use, but most people are accessing this either through digital access or through the delivery system to the main library here. Georgia Tech librarians are continuously working to improve virtual browsing solutions to meet our Georgia Tech campus needs. And by campus, what do I mean by that? Well, 400 acres here at Midtown, maybe. Our home in Atlanta, Savannah, Cobb County, the state of Georgia, Southeast United States, Lorraine, France, Shenzhen, China, okay, virtually the world. This partnership, more specifically, Catherine Murray Rust working ferociously with publishers and against the status quo, she is effectively optimizing access to existing and emerging content for this new shared service model. When I met Catherine 4 years ago, I learned more about publishers, the cost of books and published content, and copyright law than I ever cared to know. I have a full-page bio of Catherine, which I will spare you because many of you know her, and the rest of you can look that up online. Suffice to say that she has led the team that made this library service model possible. Because as she told me, the architect, it's not about the building, it's about access to the collection. That's what a library is. So without further ado, let me simply end by saying the renewed Georgia Tech Library is about remaking connections and making new connections across our campus, real and virtual. It's about creating a place that connects and reconnects our campus with an expanded collection for all to share. For leading this renewal of the library, it's my privilege to introduce and thank Catherine Murray Rust.
Thank you, Linda. That was very nice. I sometimes have given presentations recently where some of the things we're doing scare people. So it's nice to have an audience that has some idea of the context of the libraries here at Tech, the history of the libraries, because I think it's extremely important as background for what we're trying to do in the coming years. And so let me see if I can. So I was asked to talk to you this morning about the mission and the vision and how that's changed, how it is changing and will continue to change, and to give you context from a programmatic point of view about what we're doing with Library Next and the planning going forward. This graphic we've been using for a very long time, the Library 2020 plan was done in 2012. It was the beginning of a conversation with the Institute after the state financial situation began to improve. The library renovation was on in the planning stages when Clough was built. And the idea, when I came here in 2008, just unfortunately as the world economy collapsed, the idea was that the library would be renovated and after Clough was built. All of that went off everybody's list, but by 2012 things were improving in the university system and in the state. And the issue was renovations might be possible. So the library, we got together and said, okay, here's our chance. We can make a statement with Library 2020, and we made an offer to the Institute. Essentially what we said was, we will move 60% of the paper and microform collections off-site somewhere if you will do something about the life safety issues of the two libraries on campus. They do not have sprinklers. They are the most heavily used buildings on campus, 24/7, almost every day of the year. With that, we then had a series of tours for the campus leadership to show them some of the ugliest parts of the libraries and what we referred to as the asbestos collection that we had. And that was the beginning. And from there, we went through a process to try to figure out what kinds of new services would be best in terms of supporting the campus, in terms of research and in teaching going forward into the 21st century. And we did that work with Bright Spot Consulting, and we still use some of that work in our plans for going forward. We did the Emory collaboration, which Linda talked about, and I will have to say, Linda was enormously helpful in the design of the building and in ensuring Georgia Tech's interest and our particular goals were met in that project. We also are continuing to try to build a shared collection with Emory. We're not there yet. We have built a building which is beginning to function really well, but the real sharing of collections we have not done. And then we've done infrastructure optimization. We are trying to apply the techniques used in industry, supply chain, and portfolio management to improve customer service. And so we did a lot of work on trying to do essentially industrial engineering, mapping processes and workflows, and we're still doing some of that work. We've done change management work and leadership work. And eventually, we are now at construction. We had a year's construction delay, as many of you know, but it has all started, and we are enormously grateful. What I want to talk about, however, is the programmatic changes that we've been working on, because I think for many of us in the library, we're getting to the point where we say publicly, the building is the easy part of this. The buildings, we have wonderful architects and engineers, designers, planners, construction facilities folks working with us on those buildings, and they're doing most of the work. At this point, our job is actually harder in that it involves changing the culture of a research library, and there's thousands of years of research library culture, hundreds of years of research library culture in the United States that we're trying to change, as well as trying to change the view that the campus has of a purpose of a library. If I said to any of you, what comes into your mind when the word library is said, you will think probably of the public library you used as a child. You will think of, this decides that, it wants me to do things. Ignore the chiming. You may think of the high school library you had if you were fortunate to live somewhere where your high school had a library. Or you will think of the research library, the university library, where you did your academic work, your undergraduate degree, or your graduate degrees. But mostly what you'll think of as a building filled with books. And what we're trying to say is, yes, buildings are still important. But buildings filled with books are not everything that a library is. A library is a service. It's an environment. And now in the digital age, when we've moved from scarcity of information to abundance of information, and from the analog world to the digital world, a library exists in virtual space even more than it exists in the physical space. So what I say now to people in the presentations I give at Tech and elsewhere is, think of the library less as the center of what the library is trying to do, the library buildings, and think of it more as the headquarters, where the organization's headquarters is, or a clubhouse for the communities that we built, graduate student communities, undergraduate communities, to make their own, but it's more of a clubhouse rather than the boundary of what a library is. So that's a huge cultural transformation. And as part of the work that we've been doing, we say what began as a building renovation is now a transformation. And we have changed our mission and vision recently, updated it. And our goal is really not to only build a wonderful research library and a wonderful research library for this institution, but actually it's to make Georgia Tech in the academic enterprise more competitive for the best students, the best faculty, research dollars, and innovative education. That's what we're here for, to support that effort. And our strategy has two parts. One is to embed the library's programs and services in the research and teaching mission of the institution. We are an academic support service in the digital realm and in the physical realm. And the other piece of it, the way that we're going to do what my colleague Amit calls frugal innovation, is to make the library's organization and business processes more efficient and more customer-focused through radical restructuring of our organization and our programs. And to this end, we've been doing a lot of work in terms of continuous improvement, using industrial techniques, as I said. So we have changed the mission and the vision a little bit, not a lot. The Georgia Tech Library exists to catalyze discovery and the creation of knowledge, in partnership, of course, with the faculty and the students. And the vision is that we define the technological research university of the 21st century, and so that students, faculty, and staff are inspired. Inspirational space has always been part of what libraries do, to create the next through innovative digital and physical environments, curated scholarly content, outstanding services, and information expertise. And a point that I now make every time I give a presentation on this is libraries have all four of those elements. They are digital and physical environments, curated scholarly content, outstanding services, and information expertise. All four elements need to be in what we call a library. And what we're trying to do is convey that message and make it part of the culture here at Georgia Tech to believe that all four of those elements are what make an outstanding library for this institution. And with that, I'm going to turn this over to my colleagues who are working on building design, the wonderful people. And I believe we are having a panel. Is that correct? So we have to take a break for just a moment and move our chairs back up here and probably turn the lights on. Not yet. I am sorry. Brian Tanner.
Thank you. Can I push the slides forward?
No, that's all, please.
Okay.
Just hit return.
You're just the return. But if it chimes at you, ignore it.
Okay.
You can just turn the sound off.
Good morning. I'm Brian Tanner with Praxis 3. We're the Atlanta-based part of the architecture team in collaboration with BNIM out of Kansas City. So as others have said, the building is kind of the easy part in this thing, so I'm going to talk about the easy part here. What is not easy is that what we were challenged to do is to just create the research library of the 21st century and to make the invisible visible. No problem, right? So a lot of you have seen this image before in various publications, probably around campus. It highlights three of the big moves that we're doing, but I'm going to talk about lots of other moves and lots of other specific strategic things we've been doing. Here you can see on the right the spectacular north curtain wall of Price Gilbert, which we will be restoring to its original glory, but with additional performance and energy efficiency characteristics. You see a reconfigured bridge, which I'll talk more about later, but it's much more transparent than it has been before, creating an area of connection rather than congestion. And then you see Crossland Tower, or the tower on the left, which was previously an entirely brick-clad building, which we will be opening up and making it more hospitable for people. There are several sort of pairs of concepts that have informed the design as we've moved forward. For one, we're taking assets that have performed very well for 50 or 60 years, and we're going to give them a renewed lease on life for the next 50 or 60 years. As the dean said, we are converting spaces that were primarily intended for the storage of books and tweaking them to be more beneficial spaces for people, with light and more healthy environments, and inspiring the scholarship that Dean Russ talked about so effectively. On the left, you see the existing tower facade as you go up the hill from the residence halls of East Campus toward the library on Bobby Dodd Way. I like to say this is the least impressive 8-story building I've ever seen, the most invisible 8-story building I've ever seen. It is not a very welcoming approach. It's a very inward-focused building. We're going to make it more outward-focused and person-friendly, if not have better curb appeal. As we said before, the existing bridge, if you want to call it that, it looks more like a wall than a bridge to me, but it's really an area of congestion. Anyone who has tried to thread the needle through as you go up the hill toward the Hill District from the architecture building knows it's not a very pleasant experience. We're going to open that up and make it a lot more connected rather than congested. Oops. Okay, so I want to walk everybody through how the building is organized a little bit. This is the lowest level. It's called the archive level because it contains, in the lowest level of the tower, the archive, some logistical, some space for logistics, and one classroom. But primarily this is for utility spaces and not a lot of public interaction at this level. The Grove level, or ground level, what is currently called the ground level, in the existing configuration, the tower and the Price Gilbert building, and to orient you, the top of the page would be Bobby Dodd Way. The bottom of the page would be the Grove, the hill that leads down toward architecture. The tower is on the left, Price Gilbert is on the right. Currently, these buildings are barely connected to each other at this level. The big transformation that's going to happen is that we are, by reconfiguring the bridge and the area between the two buildings, we're going to create a continuous connection all the way from that entrance we showed you on Bobby Dodd Way, through the tower, through the connector, through Price Gilbert, and on to connect with Clough to create one continuous space here. This will be the hub of the library and a sort of a super highway through the project. This also includes the library store, which is the service point for librarians that is really going to reinvent the way that these services are delivered to the public. This is the first floor in the Price Gilbert building. It will resemble a lot what it is today. It will remain primarily a reading room. There will also be an exhibit area and a student event network. And on the tower side, we have an archive reading room, a special collection reading room for the science fiction collection, which is a completely unique and world-renowned collection that Georgia Tech has of science fiction literature. And it all overlooks a brand new reading room in the tower that sort of recapitulates some of the really nice reading rooms in Price Gilbert. As we move up, this is primarily an analog collaboration story. So these are places where we have good old-fashioned people working with people, study spaces, collaboration areas. Some digital work here, but mostly collaboration spaces, a classroom, and in Price Gilbert it is still configured to have the balconies that overlook the reading room as it is currently. Moving up to level 3, we're entering the more digital realm. So these spaces are more computer-based, high-performance computing, lots of media manipulation spaces for both video and audio. And then in the tower building, we have some visualization labs for high-performance visualization, immersive environments, and also some staff and faculty areas. At level 4, which is the top level at Price Gilbert, again, the configuration remains essentially the same. We still have the balconies that overlook the reading rooms, but we have some additional collection spaces, some additional collaboration spaces, some group collaboration areas, and then in the tower, we have some additional faculty space. This is the teaching studio and faculty are really addressed at this level. Faculty, then we get to the 5th level. There are no more stories in the Price Gilbert building, but in the tower, we have entirely faculty and staff offices. The entire facility is conceived to be on a spectrum of active at the lowest levels to the most quiet at the highest levels. So as we rise, we become more quiet and have better environments for study and quiet collaboration. The 6th level is given over to the graduate student community. The Clough Commons is primarily an undergraduate-based facility. It's connected to the library complex. This is more oriented towards graduate students. It's something that the library has really wanted to deliver. And then at the 7th floor, which is the top sort of occupiable level of the tower, Any of you that have been up there to the existing first room know that the view from the north face of the tower is spectacular towards the Midtown skyline. We will now have a reading room there that's available to the students, and also a meeting room on the south end of the building that's flanked with roof terraces on either side. These spaces will be mostly used as reading rooms for students to use as quiet study space, but they will also be available for special events for the entire campus to use. And here's the overall view, which you can see some trellis structures at the top, at the southern two corners that shade the terraces on the south end of the building that overlook the Hill District and on towards the downtown skyline. Quickly looking at the exteriors, we talked about the congestion at the bridge. We're proposing a lot more open, transparent, and connective zone here. Looking at the sort of lack of entrance at this as one comes up the hill from the north part of campus, we're creating a new actual entrance into Price Gilbert at this level, which connects into that overall hub of activity at the ground floor level. You can see on the left, too, a space that we're calling the Screened Porch. Anyone who goes to Dancing Goats over at Ponce City Market will know what kind of space we're talking about. It's a unique category of space for the Georgia Tech campus. Here's that wonderful Bobby Dodd approach to the tower, which we're creating a new entrance for, which will be much more transparent and open. Again, this building really does not present well to the Bobby Dodd frontage in a very friendly way. We're going to be opening that up. You can see a seating riser here that sort of bookends the ones that we have in the Clough complex on the other side, and some of the other collaboration spaces inside. From the plaza, you see the tower and the Price Gilbert building on the left. We'll be effectively restoring and respecting the original architecture of the Heffernan building that Linda talked about so eloquently. It really is one of the finest examples of this period of architecture in Atlanta, not just at the campus. And so we'll be effectively restoring that building with new high-performance exterior skin, but protecting the architecture. For Crossland Tower, we're completely opening up the south facade and the north facade. And because the south facade faces more harmful rays of sun, to protect the environment, the interior environment, we've got a series of sunshades that both block sunlight, but also reflect daylight into the space so that the daylight will penetrate more deeply into the center of the building, giving more daylight to more collaboration spaces. You can see a little bit of the bridge there in the middle, too. Again, the bridge that's actually more like a wall, and a much more open bridge. Quickly looking at the interiors, this would be the view as one walks in the front door of Price Gilbert from the plaza level. So from the Skiles approach toward Price Gilbert, this is a new stair that leads down to the main, what is going to be now the main ground level of the complex. This is the restored reading room. You can see we've taken the book stacks, which used to run perpendicular to where they're shown here, and turn them horizontally so that you get more visual access to books, even though the collections are reduced. You see that the reading rooms themselves really are an updated 21st century version of what this building was designed to be to start with. This is the Scholars Event Network. This is another unique venue on the campus. This is in effect a sort of library-based conference center type space where events that are scholarship-based but not tied to a particular discipline can happen in multiple formats: lecture, seminar, meeting, dissertation defense, lots of different things. This is the new reading room in the tower, which we are removing an entire section of floor so that we can create some two-story spaces similar to what we already have in Price Gilbert. This is the seating riser we saw from the outside earlier. So as you enter the building from Bobby Dodd Way through that new entrance at the corner, you see the seating riser that goes up to the main level, and then to the right is how you enter into the reading room and on to the rest of the facility. This is the Innovation Atrium. This sort of binds together that analog level, which is a more social and interactive and collaborative space, with the digital spaces above, and trying to catalyze opportunities for collaboration. And this is that 7th floor reading room, and I think the screen is a little bit washed out here, but the views toward the Midtown skyline will be spectacular there. Energy efficiency. On the left here, you see the existing building condition. It's annual energy use intensity. Excuse me. As we progress through the design, excuse me, we were able to reduce the energy consumption of the building. Now, many of you know that there are lots of things that contribute to energy use in a building. One of them is heat, and we often think that sunlight and electric lighting were probably the biggest contributors to that. Actually, it's our bodies. Our bodies contribute the most heat. By moving the books out of the facility and bringing in more people, we are therefore really elevating the heating load in these buildings. And this graphic kind of illustrates that. We are increasing the number of seats from 1,250 to 2,360. So we are, in effect, doubling the number of people that can use the library. At the same time, we're reducing the energy by 60%. So it's a pretty remarkable energy efficiency story there. Twice as many people, 60% less energy. And now I think John Fulford or Gary Patrick are going to speak about construction.
So John and I don't really have any prepared remarks for the construction. I think we'll be happy to answer specific questions when we get to the panel discussion. But the construction project, which you've seen, if you're anywhere on campus, you can see it has been underway for a while. And it's a two-phase construction. The first phase is underway now and will run through late 2018. We're looking to complete that work probably in the November timeframe of 2018 and try to occupy Crossland Tower between semesters probably and start work in January in Price Gilbert phase, which will last about a little over a year. During that time, there's going to be impacts to pedestrian circulation. I don't know, is there an advance? How do you advance this? There we go. So the first phase of construction is what you see right now in that area. The main entrance to the construction site is off 4th Street. That will probably remain for both phases of construction. The work in Price Gilbert is the access is unaffected. All of the work is in Crossland. And then as we move into the second phase of construction, that's going to reverse. The construction area will be focused on on Price Gilbert, and Crossland Tower will be occupied as the library until we finish. That second phase is probably going to be a little bit more impactful to the campus in terms of the use of the building, because during that time period, Price Gilbert will be disconnected from both Crossland Tower and the Clough building. So to get between Clough and the library will involve actually leaving the building and going outside and coming around. And that's about what I have on the construction. Want to say anything? So, yeah. So there's some. This is just some. We do have some photographs. I know sometimes people don't know what's behind the fence. So it's been. Go ahead, John.
So in this area on the south side along Bobby Dodd, we're re-waterproofing the foundation wall so that the new archive collection down in the basement is safe. But as you can see in the bottom of this photo, there's a lot of utilities and things that have been put in place over the last 60 years. So we've been hydrovacking all of the dirt out, and once you get down toward the southwest corner, we're going down about 35 feet, re-waterproofing the wall, shoring it up so our men are safe in the hole, and then re-backfilling. So it's been quite the operation. What you see here is a scaffold, which is our trash chute, which is how we're getting all of the demo debris from floor slabs, existing walls, utilities, and the exterior skin that we're tearing off. So this trash chute, everything drops down from 7-8 floors into dumpsters, and we're hauling that off and recycling everything. So we're actually doing really well on recycling all the existing utility materials right now.
And actually, these slides were prepared a month and a half ago,
Yeah, that's true.
and we had anticipated having this meeting, and we were interrupted by a tropical storm in September. So the photographs are a little bit out of date, and I don't even know that trash chute
It's still there.
is still
it's
there.
coming down next week.
But it's coming down next week.
Yep.
So.
So this, at the time, was the existing penthouse. As you can see, we've been tearing out that existing structure. So now what's there currently today is a new structure. So if you look up at the tower, you'll see the new yellow sheathing that's going around the new penthouse structure. This is the view that was talked about from the roof, where the new reading room is going to be. So you do have quite a spectacular view. Where there used to be a parapet wall here and it was really utilitarian space, is now going to be opened up for a good view. This is the basement, which now becomes the archive collection. There was a lot of utilities down there. We tore out all of the existing mechanical equipment. We've been putting new mechanical equipment in. We've currently done a lot of slab trenching in the basement to put in new utilities that'll serve as new utilities for the new building. This is the existing core. Not sure exactly which floor this is, but the existing travertine in a lot of areas is being preserved, and in a few areas kind of rehabilitated. So we're maintaining the core, but shifting it from a stairwell center to a bathroom and more of a functional center than people moving.
Yeah, I don't even know either.
So this is 7th floor. The old view looking out toward the north towards Midtown. All of this is gone now, so it's a clean, open space with new curtain wall coming all the way up. So all of that has been cleaned out.
So that's a little bit behind where we really are, and I know that anywhere from just about anywhere on campus you can really see that the building's been opened up and looks. I think most people look at it like this, think it's probably going to be a really, really nice addition to campus. There will be updated photographs available, I think, through the library's website. So I would, if you're interested in the construction progress, I know that the library will be keeping photographs updated as we go along. So I think at that, I think we'll open up for questions. I'm going to turn the lights on. You can, or stand. Because the microphone's pretty short. If we need a microphone. Do we need a microphone? We do need a microphone. Okay. So the microphone has a very short cable.
Shall I MC the question?
Absolutely.
There you go.
So,
Crystal has one, but she's, want to wait a minute or do you want to do it now?
I can do it now. It's a simple question. This may not be relevant, but will it change the grade of the hill the construction?
that's actually a very good question. We're not changing the grade of the hill, but in effect, programmatically, we are lowering the entrance point so that you enter the building lower down the hill. A massive part, and we really didn't talk about this much in the presentation. Linda's not happy with me because of that. We're making incredible improvements to accessibility for this facility. It's obviously 60 years old and was not designed with current accessibility requirements in mind. By creating that sort of superhighway level, that Grove level, we create increased access and really a route for people to get without going to the crest of the hill all the way from Old CE, past Clough to the Tech Green, all indoors and all on one level and all barrier free. Other questions? In the back there? Yeah, the question was, we're increasing the number of people and making lots of collaboration space. How are we dealing with noise and sound? From an architectural standpoint, I can say that we talked a little bit about planning the building to be noisiest at the lowest level and most quiet at the upper level. So it will sort of, one will be able to find one's place within the spectrum of spaces that's available, but also the choice of materials, flooring materials, ceiling materials, cladding materials to reduce ambient noise. We have done considerable things. Also, the improvements to the envelope are going to keep less of noise from without the library from coming into the library. Any programmatic things y'all want to talk about?
Only to say that it's the issue of noise has been one of the library's highest priorities, to the point of annoying people because we feel that there are many spaces on campus where collaboration and conversation can take place, and we want to have some of those, but we also believe that there's a real need for people to work alone together, to be engaged in academics, but in a room full of people who are doing similar things, but to have the opportunity for quiet, because there are so many spaces now that are not quiet.
Any instructional space in the new building?
Question is there any instructional space in the new building?
Lee, do you want to take
Yeah, sure. So one of, you heard the reinvigorated mission and vision from Catherine. We do a lot of instruction in the library, and we're actually expanding our instructional offerings. So teaching is a core part of the library's mission, and in particular teaching about library resources, the nature of information, data analysis, the data visualization lab as an anchor point for a data science program that the library is embarking on. So there are two instructional spaces that are planned for the library. Really, we intend these to be used frequently throughout the day, but we want to maximize utilization. So those rooms can then be used by students when not used by librarians to teach classes. I know that's a campus-wide effort.
Yeah, I think just to follow on that, I don't think that there's not been any intent to use the classrooms for general classroom scheduling.
And as Brian pointed out, we have a space that's called the Scholars Event Network. I give Paul Gobart credit for this idea. He had suggested that there was a tremendous need on campus for faculty, particularly with graduate students, but perhaps also with undergraduate students, to have a space where they can have mini conferences and do exhibits. There is exhibit space, so there could be posters, and we also envision it to be a space where dissertation defenses can take place if there is no space that's quite as wonderful elsewhere on campus. So it's intended to celebrate the academics, but also give the faculty something that we don't think is available elsewhere, and without charging rent.
Yeah, that space will have, not only will that space have state-of-the-art AV, unlike what we kind of have, state-of-the-art AV for putting on those events, but also equipment there to capture on video and audio those events to be stored within the library. So it sort of completes that cycle of life of scholarship production and scholarship, what's the opposite of production? Consumption, I guess.
We touched briefly on the core of the building. What can we expect as far as restrooms and elevators?
So each building is different. We will have 2 elevators in Price Gilbert building, and one of which would be like the primary mode of moving in that building. We'll have 3 elevators where we currently only have 2 in the tower building. So we're increasing by a lot the number of the elevators we have. We've moved the exit stairs in the tower out of the core, John mentioned this, and we're moving them to the exterior of the building to make more room for accessible restrooms inside Crosland Tower. We're also adding single-user restrooms in Crosland Tower. um, uh, unisex restrooms. We're adding restrooms in Price Gilbert. Long story short, we're adding a lot of restrooms, and we're adding at least an elevator in each building.
We're also adding, building on that, inclusive restrooms, as well as a shower locker room feature as well.
That's right.
And also, we should mention, by moving the stairs out of the core, which are kind of fire stair, emergency stairs, to the outside of the building, they're going to be much more pleasant and inviting to just walk between floors to encourage exercise and walking, using it every day. They're not going to seem like fire stairs.
That's a good point, Steve. Yes.
Phase 2 for the renovation of Price Gilbert starts in fall 2019, was it? But I was going to ask, what is in the works on making sure that Price Gilbert is still useful and in safe conditions for people who are using it currently up until that point? I understand that we need to be like, we need to have some understanding for you guys during the construction phases and all, but I've seen things that, you know, is there attention being put into those things right now, or are you guys waiting until phase 2?
The question is how
So-
we're protecting Price Gilbert for use during the construction phase.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, Price Gilbert is going to remain in the condition that it's in right now until we start construction of it in probably January 2019.
We are also trying to do, you know, we worry about this from a safety point of view and a preservation of the architecture point of view, as well as a programmatic point of view. So we have a really wonderful group of people who work on security and safety in collaboration with the Georgia Tech facilities and construction folks and the police and everybody else. So we're trying to make it as safe as possible. It's really difficult given how landlocked the buildings are. So we hope that we can do with fencing and with signage and with telling people when things are going to be noisy and difficult, so we can keep people safe and at the same time also have it not be so loud that no one can do any work. We are told that faculty in Hinman and Old CE and other places are now wearing ear plugs because sometimes the noise is pretty loud. That won't last. I think that'll be done when the destruction of Crossland Tower is over. We also, from a programmatic point of view, are incredibly worried about making sure that there's enough space for students to, especially during finals, exams, both this semester and next semester and then next fall, to get their work done. So if there are concerns, you can either go directly to Amit and the other librarians, some of whom still work in the building, and talk to them about this. We also have safety and security people who will talk to you. So, you know, if students have concerns, we want to know about them. We have student advisory boards, both at the undergraduate and the graduate level, and they're also a conduit of information for us. We're also talking about moving some computing facilities to Clough for while Price Gilbert is under construction, so we have enough sort of general computing. And the provost has agreed that we can take some space in Clough to do that. There also are seats that have been added in Clough because of the construction, so that will help.
Thank you so much.
Great question. Yes, sir.
If we have questions regarding, like, for example, like I'm doing a project on this project. If we have questions regarding, like, the bidding process and everything else, is there someone we can contact?
That would be me. If you want to see me after the meeting, I'll give you my contact information. Or is there going to be are we going to post this somewhere?
Yes.
On them. So Jason's got the contact information for all of us on the panel, and you can certainly reach out to me.
Gary Pepper.
I'm the communications manager, so Facebook, Twitter, if you use that, help us at library, any of that stuff. Whatever people want to.
With the transformation of services that we're having in the library, I know we've piloted some of these different services and programs. Will the library continue to do that? And also, how can the Georgia Tech community give feedback on those pilots or programs?
That's a great question, Crystal. We do have a culture of piloting, prototyping, trying things out. I think this project has really accelerated that that instinct that's innate at Georgia Tech and Georgia Tech Library. So we anticipate doing more pilots, and we have this structure of managing our entire project portfolio, which is a more structured approach to coming up with a pilot idea, seeing how long it should last, what the budget implications would be, and then there's also an assessment piece now. I think in we'll say prior decades, that wasn't really the case. It was more ad hoc, and now there's a structured program. So in terms of what you can feedback, that if any of you have feedback on, say, the lockers that you've seen, or the new data visualization pilot that we'll be launching soon, or the library store, you can always go to one of the rovers in the library store and provide information there. We answer every comment that comes into our comment box online. You can also tweet, Facebook, any channel you decide to choose, even Reddit, will respond to, acknowledge and respond to. So I look in your direction because I see a few faces that I haven't seen before. So I'm really excited that you guys are here. Love to have you engage more with the project.
I have a question. What we hear a lot about is the power infrastructure in the building. Can you talk about some of the upgrades to the power infrastructure in the building in terms of being able to support more devices and help students stay in the library longer?
Yeah, right this very week we are coordinating furniture layouts with electrical delivery, from the floor below, so that we have power and data coverage all over. It was probably one of the primary get-right concepts that we had when we were designing the facility, was providing enough power and access to wireless internet. And we've worked very hard to put that stuff all over the place in ways that are integrated and conspicuous, but not in a bad way. Anybody else want to jump on that?
I would say that this is also one of, noise was important to us, and power and data. 99% of the use of the library's collections is e-only, is digital. So this is extraordinarily important to be able to deliver the kinds of AV services, the kinds of access to content services that we want, and I think everybody's worked really hard to make that happen.
And if we didn't make it clear, we are completely replacing all electrical, mechanical, plumbing. We're adding fire sprinklers. All systems will be brand new, 21st century, high efficiency, high delivery systems to the building. Yes.
Do you know how plugloads were figured in the energy model? That's been an issue for us in the past. The energy models sound great, and then we operate the building and find that plugloads overtake what we were hoping we were going to accomplish.
I can't tackle that.
I don't personally. I wish the engineer were here, but that's a great thing to submit as a question. We can get you an answer for that. Our partners, BNIM, for this project are some of the leading sustainability architects in the world, and we're principals of their firm were responsible for establishing the LEED requirements in the first place 20 years ago. So we've paid very much attention to those sorts of details.
I noticed in the schematic for the floor drawing, the floor plan, it looks like the rotunda is going away.
Yes.
Okay. I was curious about whether any of the material is designed or planned for reuse, or is all of it just a new stuff?
What can be used will be reused. Unfortunately, most of the material in there is travertine. Well, let's say fortunately, for the past 50 years,
right, most
of the material in there is travertine. It's beautiful, it's wonderful. It doesn't work well, though, when you try to move it. It's a very brittle stone, and most of that is destroyed, will be destroyed when we take it out. So we'll be trying to save as much as we can, but not really. But we're recycling all of the construction debris. Our goal is a 95% construction debris recycling. So we're definitely trying to keep it out of the landfill.
I think current tallies, we're about 97% on recycling of everything we've taken out of the buildings currently.
if I could just elaborate on the materials, there's also a custom design light fixture in the center of that rotunda. And we are coordinating with salvaging that and hopefully having a just-in-time reinstallation somewhere in a circa 1968 Georgia Tech facility. So that's something that we're thinking about. It's not been finalized, but the same person who designed that rotunda also designed Van Leer. And then the Georgia Tech stairwell that was built in the 1960s, that stairwell is also a potential candidate for that light fixture.
Well, if there are no more questions, thanks for everyone's attention. And I think that's it. Thank you.